You are now watching, By the Minute, where we highlight unsolved, unidentified and missing cases across the nation.
Today we head to Indiana during the 70s. Living in Indiana in the 70s was considered a place of nowhere, but there was plenty of excitement from Elvis performing at the state fair to A.J. Foyt winning his fourth race at the Indianapolis 500. But there were also crime cases from the 70s that today remain unsolved. Today we'll cover cold cases from the 70s. August 12, 1972. Bloomington, Indiana.
A young woman would go shopping and later be found deceased, and the killer would leave markings on her body. Vicki Harold, 25, would be spending the day shopping and would last be seen at Kmart located in the east side of Bloomington. Vicki's roommate wouldn't see her in the evening and would report her missing to police. Police would begin working a missing persons case and find Vicki's car, a 1965 Plymouth Valiant, parked in a lot near the College Mall in Bloomington. Detectives would later discover Vicki's body was found on an access road to McCormick's Creek State Park, unclothed, and on her body there were 2 alpha characters carved on her chest. Autopsy would reveal cause of death due to strangulation. Someone may have seen something that could help us get authorities closer to catching the suspect in this case.
Vicki would only want to spend her day shopping and someone would viciously take her life. Have tips? Please contact the Indiana State Police.
July 29, 1973. Indianapolis, Indiana. A mother would be found hurt from a fire, but autopsy would reveal that things were not as they seemed. Police would be called to the 7200 block of Twin Oaks Road for a fire. At the apartment they would find a fire contained in an unit which belonged to our victim. Patricia Anderson, 43, mother, who worked as a loan adjuster, and was recently divorced. It would be that evening when Patricia's daughter would be headed out for a date. But upon her arrival she would see police and fire rescue at her apartment. Patricia would be taken to the hospital where she would succumb to her injuries, but her injuries would be later noted as homicidal. Autopsy would reveal that Patricia was stabbed 21 times. The killer wanted to cover their crimes by starting 2 fires in the apartment. Witnesses do remember seeing a young man in his 20s, 5 feet 6 inches, with shoulder-length hair saying, "Don't worry about her, she's already dead." Today the suspect remains unknown and Patricia's family continues to work on her case. If you have any tips or information about this case, please contact the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. August 24, 1975. Green Fork, IN. A young woman would go for a walk and never be seen alive again. Pamela Smith, 24, would go for an evening walk around 6:30 p.m. When she didn't make it home her family would report her missing. Pamela lived in the rural area on a farm east of Green Forks, Indiana. It would be on March 30, 1976 when Pamela's remains were found off a county road in Henry County, Indiana. Pamela would only want to go for a walk and she lost her life. Today many women have that fear of simply going on a walk. Creating safer communities comes when we make sure that suspects responsible in cases like this are brought into custody so that they can never do this again. We do that by sharing what we know. Today the Indiana State Police are asking anyone with tips to contact them. June 22, 1976. Liberty, Indiana. A young man at work would become a victim of an armed robbery. Police would be called to the Lutz Sporting Goods and Grocery Store located on State 44. Inside they would find our victim Daniel Lutz, 28, would be found deceased inside. At this time authorities have not released many details in this case to the public as this is still an open homicide investigation. Anyone with tips is encouraged to contact Indiana State Police. October 8, 1976. Benton County, IN. An unidentified woman remains were exhumed with hopes that DNA will help reveal her name. A farmer would find a box on his property but it would be too heavy for him to lift himself. He grabbed some extra help and they would load the box onto his truck, but the farmer had a weird feeling and decided to take a peek inside. Inside he would find a broken perfume bottle but another foul smell coming from the box, and as he peered deeper inside the box what he say would cause him to alert the police. Police would be called to a farm located in Otterbein. Inside they would find a deceased woman with a gunshot wound to the back of her head. According to the Star report, the box would be sealed together with gray furnace tape and rope. The box was manufactured at Melrose Park 3. Autopsy would reveal that our victim was deceased for 1 to 1.5 weeks. Detectives also believe that the box had only been placed on the farmer's property 12 hours before it was found because it was raining earlier and the box was not wet. The woman inside would be described as a white female, 5 feet 2 inches, 160 pounds with gray or semi-gray hair around the age 60 to 65. Autopsy would reveal that she also had a mastectomy on her right side within her lifetime. Detectives would continue to look into finding our Jane Doe's identity, searching dental records and using news outlets to help get tips, but unfortunately there have been little leads. In 2019, authorities would look further into this case with hopes to get more information into our Jane Doe's identity and would head to the burial site and exhume her body. With doing so, forensics teams would collect DNA with hopes to get her identity, but the costs are close to $5,000 and investigators must still work other cases in the meantime. In prior cold cases of the unidentified, they may not be from the places where their remains were found. Help us bring attention to this case across the nation by simply sharing this video. Your efforts can help authorities get closer to solving a 48-year-old case. If you know the identity of our Jane Doe or any tips about this case, please contact the Indiana State Police. Martinsville, Indiana. September 12, 1977. A college student headed home would experience car troubles, and today her family remains devoted to working her case. Anne Harmeier, 20, Indiana University student, was known to be prompt and a staple in her family, and would be leaving her hometown in Cambridge City and headed back to campus. On her way back to campus she would experience some car trouble on Route 37. The following day, Anne would not be seen in class. This was highly unlike her, and her classmates would wonder where Anne could be. Things would take a worse turn for her loved ones when Anne didn't call her mom. A missing persons report was filed promptly. Indiana State Police would then set up a highway checkpoint to speak with drivers that may have seen anything, searching the area and heading to the media, which would gain national news coverage.
Marjorie Harmeier has a lot of friends, and some of them helped her this weekend with the sad job of cleaning out her daughter Anne's apartment. Marjorie is losing hope of ever seeing Anne again.
Each day brings a little less hope, but maybe she's with a group of people, and she may turn up.
This is Anne, 20 years old, went to church regularly, sang and danced, was known as kind and considerate, a junior at college. Anne Harmeier left home September 12th to drive more than 100 miles to the campus of Indiana University, but she never made it here. Her mother found her car abandoned on the road, its doors locked and emergency flasher lights blinking. Since then, the people of Anne's hometown have been trying to find her. This is Anne's hometown, Cambridge City, Indiana. 3,000 people. They started a search and reward fund, more than $10,000. Printed up bumper stickers. The people also printed flyers with Anne's picture. One of the first places to post one was Bob Fortman's grocery store. Anne Harmeier, he says, was like a member of his own family.
Of course, I've known Anne. I remember when she was born, I knew her parents, her father, long time ago. But this really tops everything.
Anne's small-town neighbors have big city ideas about finding her. They put up billboards along the highway where she was last seen. Volunteers from the university have even been tromping through the woods near where Anne disappeared. Indiana State Police are investigating too, but the townspeople are following up on the smallest leads, some the police don't bother with. The townspeople are giving posters to cross-country truck drivers to help spread the word. The people here say they won't stop until they find out what happened to Anne. And Marjorie Harmeier can't thank them enough.
Well, I think that's one advantage of living in a small town. Maybe in a city you're another statistic, but this town's fantastic.
Mike Jackson.
Unfortunately, Anne would be found deceased, and a farmer discovered her on October 18, 1977. Anne was found 4 miles away from her car. Autopsy would reveal that Anne would lose her life to strangulation and was also sexually assaulted. Police have continued to investigate suspects and gain new tips from the community. Anne's family is dedicated to making sure that Anne's name is never forgotten and that the person responsible for taking their loved one away will answer for their crimes. Cold cases are never cold when there are people from your community mourning the loss of their loved ones. Help us get justice by contact Indiana State Police with tips. Speedway, Indiana. November 17, 1978. I remember cranking up the grill at my first job. Oh, the experience of making your own money. For kids making an earnest buck, lives were cut short as they were abducted from their workplace.
Chef murders planted a huge question mark in the minds of almost everyone in the community. Why kill Ruth Ellen Shelton, Daniel R. Davis, Jane Freet, and Mark Flemings? Why dump their bodies in Johnson County? Things have changed. This is the site where the tragedy began. It was a burger chef, it became a Hardee's, and now it stands empty. But one thing has remained constant during this past decade. The right suspect remains at large.
That burger chef quadruple murder stands out as the most alarming example of mayhem in our city that hasn't been solved. Everybody knows about it, everybody knows how serious it was. It represents not the best in police work and not the best in terms of violence in our community. It's a very frustrating crime that looks now as if it will go unsolved forever.
Jane Freet, Ruth Shelton, and Daniel Davis were all scheduled for work that night. Mark Flemings was called in to cover another worker's shift. Employees that night were asked to stay later to clean and prep the kitchen for the next day's shift. Jane, being the assistant manager, took charge of the team that night. A coworker knew that the team would be working late that night. The coworker sees that the lights are still on and Jane's car is not there. There he would find things at the burger chef in Speedway completely off. Police were called to the restaurant where they would find the register had been robbed of $581. Police believed that the teenagers committed the robbery together and would come back home, eventually. Cops then told the manager to proceed with business as usual and to clean up the crime scene. 2 days later, cops would realize how that decision was one they'd regret for decades to come. November 19, 1978, cops were called to a remote area in Johnson County, Indiana. Hikers would find the bodies of the 4 missing burger chef employees. Ruth and Daniel were both shot execution style. Jane was found stabbed, with the blade still stuck inside of her heart. Mark was determined to have died from the results of blunt force trauma, after being beaten and choked with a chain. Police realized that this was not a petty theft crime but a robbery, abduction, and a quadruple murder investigation. The burger chef crime scene was already compromised after police decided to not investigate other avenues outside of the petty theft. The police then produce a theory. One of the employees went to take the trash out and was confronted by 2 or more men who planned to rob the burger chef that night. One of the employees then recognizes the robbers, and all employees were abducted and taken to the remote area where they were later killed. Who would hurt these 4 young kids? How was it possible that 4 people were taken away from their workplace? The heat was on the police to solve this case. While police ignored the fact that purses and jackets were left at the crime scene the night of the abduction, the following day they found Jane's car was abandoned and evident of foul play. Police then run into another hiccup later in the investigation as they realized the bodies were repositioned for crime scene photographs.
There's nothing I would have done differently. We conduct our investigation according to standard procedures that our department and other agencies would use. There's nothing we would have done differently except we'd like to have the answer.
Answers is what the victims' families want and what the public wants, but the question mark remains, perhaps forever. Derek Thomas, Channel 6 News.
While some mistakes may warrant us to ask questions like how or why, someone out there knows the answer to who committed these vicious crimes to these innocent kids. Until then, this case remains unsolved, by the minute. Take a moment to review sketches and clay models of the potential suspects seen near the first crime scene. The Indiana State Police are focusing this investigation on a group of individuals that were committing restaurant robberies at the time. Please submit all tips to the Indiana State Police. The cases that we've covered today in our channel need your help in bringing awareness. By simply sharing this video, you help us get one step closer to safer communities, by the minute. Join our mission of bringing awareness with hopes to help authorities get justice for our victims. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.